when my parents flatly said, "It's not our problem. Take him away." I thought I had misheard them. This wasn't some random neighbor. This was my son they were talking about. I never expected my parents, who I'd bend over backwards to support, to treat their grandson like this. I'd always helped them with everything, paying their bills, rent for the garage where they still stored stuff, whatever they needed. But this time, they crossed the line. It all started 2 weeks ago when I asked them if they could watch Liam, my 6-year-old son, while I had to travel for work. I don't usually ask them for favors, especially long-term ones, but this trip was crucial and there was no one else. They hesitated like I was asking them to move mountains, but they finally agreed. I could tell they weren't thrilled about it, but they were his grandparents. How bad could it be? The first few days were quiet. Liam would call me at night and tell me that Grandma made him eat too many carrots, or that Grandpa fell asleep while watching TV. Typical stuff. But on the third day, the tone changed. Liam sounded frustrated, almost sad. He wanted to play, but they kept telling him they were tired. He didn't understand why they were so cold. I thought maybe it was just a bad day, so I told him to hang in there and that I'd call his grandparents to check in. That's when things started to unravel. When I called my mom, I expected her to rant about how energetic Liam was. Instead, she said, "We're tired of babysitting. He's your kid, not ours. You need to figure this out." I tried to stay calm, reminding her that they had agreed to watch him for 2 weeks. They had barely made it 3 days. She wasn't having it. "We're old, Justin. We don't need this stress. We're taking him to your sister's today." I was stunned. My sister Emma wasn't even expecting this. They hadn't even talked to her about it. It was as if they had dumped my son on her without warning. I was angry, but I knew that arguing on the phone wasn't going to help. I just told them, "Fine, take him there," and hung up. After that call, I began to think about how lopsided our relationship had become. I've always been the one to go to bat for them. They've never had to ask twice when they need money, a ride, or help with something around the house. But the moment I need them to do something important, it's suddenly too much for them. I wasn't going to let it go this time. That night I sent them a simple text message. "I'm done paying your bills. That includes the $500 a month and the rent for the garage. Don't expect anything more from me." Within minutes, I had 18 missed calls and texts flooding my phone. Pick up the phone. "What's going on?" "We don't understand." "Everything was fine. Call us, Justin." I ignored each one. For the next few days I focused on work and making sure Liam was okay with Emma. She was understanding and agreed to keep him until I got back. I called her every day to check in. My parents, on the other hand, went into a tailspin. They kept calling and texting, acting confused, as if they had no idea why I was cutting them off. Little did they know that this was just the beginning. The next day, I woke up to more missed calls and messages from my parents. I scrolled through the texts half-heartedly, expecting more guilt, but one caught my eye. "Justin, if you don't answer, we're going to have to do something drastic. We need to talk." Something drastic? What did that mean? I rolled my eyes, thinking it was just more manipulation. I was done with their games. Instead of answering, I called Emma to check on Liam. "He's fine," Emma said. "He was building a fort in the living room when I left for work. But listen, Justin, Mom, and Dad showed up unannounced this morning." "What? Why?" I asked, tensing up. "They didn't say much. They just kept asking me what was wrong with you. Dad acted like they were the victims of some big misunderstanding." "Of course they were," I muttered. "They love playing that role." "Yeah, but here's the weird part," Emma continued. "They brought a bunch of stuff. Old boxes, tools, like they were planning on staying here for a while. Mom casually mentioned something about needing space to figure things out. That threw me off." "You're kidding. They're moving in with you?" Emma let out a sharp laugh. "Oh, hell no. I told them they weren't staying here. They got mad, but eventually they left. I thought you should know. Something feels wrong." "Great." Now they were escalating things. I had no idea what their endgame was, but I wasn't about to get dragged into their drama. I went about my day, keeping my phone on silent. But later that afternoon, I got a call from a number I didn't recognize. It was the lawyer's office. "Mr. Justin Harrison?" the voice asked. "I'm contacting you on behalf of your parents regarding a financial arrangement. They're concerned about it. They claim they are financially dependent on you and would like to negotiate terms." I almost laughed. "Wait, are you telling me that my parents have contacted a lawyer to force me to continue paying their bills?" There was a pause. "I'm just relaying the information, sir. I suggest you discuss this with them directly." I hung up without another word, my mind racing. I couldn't believe it had come to this. Were they seriously trying to make a legal case out of me cutting them off? And for what? Because I wouldn't babysit their feelings anymore? It was surreal. I decided to confront them directly. I called my dad and didn't bother with pleasantries. "I just got a call from a lawyer. Would you like to explain?" His tone was casual, as if nothing was wrong. "Oh, that? We just thought maybe if we talked to someone, you'd come to your senses. You're being unreasonable, Justin. You've always helped us. Why stop now?" "Unreasonable?" I shot back. "You're trying to blackmail your own son because you didn't want to look after your grandson for 2 weeks. Do you hear how crazy that sounds?" "We're not blackmailing you," he said defensively, "but we're struggling here. You've been paying these bills for years. We depend on it. Maybe you should have thought about that before you decided to ditch Liam and dump him on Emma without even asking her," I said. "I'm done. I'm not paying for anything anymore." "You can't just cut us off like that," he argued. "We're your parents." "Exactly. You're my parents, not my responsibility," I said before hanging up. Later that evening, Emma called again, sounding more amused than upset. "You're not going to believe this. Mom and Dad came back to my house. They were standing on my porch with lawn chairs when I got home and said they wouldn't leave until I called them. I told them to go back to their apartment, but you know how stubborn they are." I shook my head, annoyed but somehow impressed by their determination. "Wow, they're really pulling out all the stops." "Oh, it gets better," she said. "I told them you could call them back when they stopped acting crazy. They finally left, but not before threatening to cut me out of the will. You'd think they were billionaires the way they acted." We both laughed. But deep down, I was getting tired of the theatrics. The situation had spiraled far beyond anything I'd expected. Still, I wasn't going to back down. Emma and I decided it was time to flip the script. If they wanted to play games, we could play games. What they didn't know was that we were about to give them a taste of their own medicine. I came home 10 days later and went straight to Emma's house to pick up Liam. He was thrilled to see me and jumped into my arms as soon as I walked through the door. Emma filled me in on the last few days, including my parents' bizarre antics, random visits, more guilt trips, and a dramatic claim that family bonds are being torn apart. "Typical. They're desperate," she said as we sat in her kitchen. "They even tried to play the sympathy card with me, talking about their health failing. Funny how their health only declines when their wallets do," I replied. We shared a knowing look. Emma had been through her share of battles with them too. Most of the time, they didn't take her seriously, probably because she wasn't supporting them financially like I was. But now that their cash flow had dried up, they were looking for any leverage they could find. After spending some time with Emma, I took Liam home. I wanted him to feel settled after all the chaos. He seemed fine, but I could tell he had picked up on some of the tension. "Are Grandma and Grandpa mad at us?" he asked from the back seat. I looked at him in the rearview mirror. "They're just upset because I made a decision they didn't like. But don't worry about it, it's not your fault." He nodded quietly, but I could tell it was still on his mind. The next morning, the calls began again. I ignored them at first, but after the 6th one, I finally answered. "Justin," my mother began, her voice overly sweet, "we just want to talk. You can't keep shutting us out like this." "What's there to talk about?" I said. "You've made your decisions, and I've made mine. I'm done paying your bills. End of story." "Don't be like that," she pleaded. "You're putting us in a really tough spot. We've been struggling since you cut us off. Your father has chest pains from the distress." "Really? Chest pains?" I asked skeptically. Do you know what causes chest pains? Maybe trying to make your son feel guilty when you're perfectly healthy. Justin, she snapped, dropping the sweet tone. This isn't a joke. We raised you, and this is how you repay us? Raised me? Emma and I practically raised ourselves, I said. You only show up when you want something from us, and now that I'm not your bank, I'm suddenly the bad guy. We're a family, Justin. Families support each other, she said. Exactly. And what was your support when I needed you to look after Liam? You couldn't handle 3 days of babysitting without throwing a tantrum and dumping him on Emma. There was a silence on the other end before she finally said, You're being unfair. We're old. We have limits. And so do I said. I'm not going to argue about this anymore. We done? I hung up the phone and turned it off. I was done playing their games. Over the next few days, they tried every tactic in the book, calling Emma to complain, leaving messages about ungrateful children, and even sending me a letter saying they would never forgive me if I didn't change my mind. Emma and I laughed it off, but we both knew they wouldn't give up that easily. Sure enough, a few days later, they tried one last trick. They showed up at my house unannounced. I opened the door to see the two of them standing there, looking tired and exhausted. We just want to talk, my father said. I sighed and let them in, even though I wasn't in the mood for another guilt session. They sat on the couch, fidgeting like children who'd been caught misbehaving. We've been thinking, my mom began, and we realized that we may have been a little harsh. A little? I raised an eyebrow. We've been stressed, Justin, she continued, but we don't want to fight anymore. Let's work something out. Maybe we can compromise. Compromise? I repeated. You mean you want me to start paying your bills again? No, she said quickly. Just maybe help with a few things here and there. We're not asking for much. I stood there for a moment, watching her squirm. I could see through the act. They were trying to play nice, hoping I'd give in, but I wasn't going to fall for it. I'll think about it, I finally said, knowing full well that I had no intention of giving them a dime. They left soon after, clearly unhappy that they didn't get what they wanted. Emma called me later that night and laughed when I told her what had happened. They really think they can sweet-talk you back into paying? She said. They're unbelievable. Yeah, well, they're about to learn the hard way that I'm done being their ATM, I replied. This time, I stood my ground. A few days later, my mother called again. This time, her tone was softer, almost regretful. Justin, we've been thinking a lot about everything. We want to apologize, for real this time. We were stubborn, and we're sorry for the way we treated you and Liam. I was silent for a moment, trying to figure out if this was another trick. We're inviting you and Emma over for dinner, she continued. Just the 4 of us. No pressure, no arguments. We just want to work things out. I hesitated, but figured maybe they had finally come to their senses. Besides, it couldn't hurt to give them one last chance. Emma was skeptical when I told her, but she agreed to come with me. If they pull any more stunts, I'm done, she warned. We arrived at their house that evening. The smell of baked chicken and mashed potatoes filled the air, a classic family dinner. For a moment, it almost felt like old times. Liam was staying with a friend, so it was just the adults. My mom led us to the table, smiling in a way that felt a little too rehearsed. We're so glad you both came, she said, setting down a plate of food. My dad chimed in. It's been too long since we had a nice family dinner like this. I could see that Emma was already looking at her sideways, not buying the act. Still, we went along with it for the moment. We made small talk about work, Liam's school, and other superficial topics. For a while, everything seemed normal, until it wasn't. Halfway through dinner, my dad cleared his throat. So, Justin, we've been having some real trouble lately. Things are tight financially, and it's been hard to keep up with expenses since you, stopped helping out. I put down my fork, my appetite disappearing. Emma shot me a look that said, Here we go. My mom quickly added, We know we haven't handled things well before, but maybe we can find some middle ground. We're not asking for much, just enough to get us back on our feet. Maybe you could pay the garage rent again. I took a deep breath and tried to keep my cool. Are you serious? You invited us here just to ask for money again? No, no, my mother insisted, waving her hands. We also wanted to apologize, but we need help. Help? Emma snapped before I could. Oh, come on, you're not sorry. You just want to guilt us into paying your bills again. That's exactly why we didn't trust you in the first place. My dad scowled. You don't understand, Emma. You've never been responsible for this family the way Justin has. He knows how important it is to keep things running smoothly. Emma leaned forward, her voice sharp. Don't you dare pull that crap on me. Just because Justin helped you doesn't mean you get to use him like your personal bank. We're not kids anymore, and you don't get to manipulate us. You think you're better than us now? My mother shot back. We have sacrificed so much for both of you, and now you're turning your back on us. I stood up and shook my head. That's exactly why I'm done. You just see us as your meal ticket. We came here thinking you actually wanted to fix things, but all you care about is money. Justin, wait, my dad started, but I cut him off. No, we're done here. Emma stood up too and grabbed her coat. You can keep pretending to be the victims, but we're not falling for it anymore. We both headed for the door, and I slammed it behind us. As we walked to the car, Emma let out a frustrated laugh. Unbelievable. They really thought we'd just give in. They always do, I said. But not this time. For the first time in a long time, I felt like we were finally in control. They could try all the manipulation they wanted, but we weren't going to let them win. For a while after that dinner, things were eerily quiet. I thought maybe my parents had finally gotten the message. But of course that was too good to be true. About a week later, I received a message from my mother. It was long and rambling, full of passive-aggressive lines like, "Since you and Emma don't value family anymore, we have no choice but to make some hard decisions." She went on to say that they were considering cutting us both out of the will. They wanted to make it clear that if we didn't come to our senses, we would inherit nothing when they were gone. I couldn't help but laugh. It was so typical of them to think that money would make us crawl back. I called Emma to tell her, and she cracked up too. Wait, she said between laughs. You mean the same will that probably includes Mom's collection of old furniture and Dad's broken tools? Oh no. What will we ever do without those riches? I replied. Exactly. It's all just more manipulation. They're running out of ways to control us. Let them write us out, she said. It's not like they ever cared about us as people. They only care about what we can give them. After that, neither of us bothered to respond to their threats. For the next few weeks, they kept trying to reach out, sending texts like, "It's not too late to make things right," and "Family is forever." But when they realized we weren't biting, the messages finally stopped. And just like that, they gave up. No more calls, no more texts. It was weird at first, but honestly, it was a relief. I'd spent so much of my life tied to their expectations, constantly sacrificing my own needs to keep them happy. Now, for the first time, I was free to live my life on my own terms. After that, things started to look up. Work went well and Liam seemed happier. Emma and I grew closer than ever, supporting each other without the burden of our parents. Then something unexpected happened. I met Tessa. She was smart, down to earth, and kind in a way that felt refreshing after all the chaos I'd been through. We met at a mutual friend's party, and it didn't take long for us to hit it off. The best part? Liam adored her. He'd been nervous about me dating at first, but Tessa made him feel comfortable right away. She played board games with him, helped him with his homework, and even took him on little adventures to the park. It wasn't long before he started calling her his favorite adult friend. One night after dinner, Liam asked me, "Do you think Tessa could be my new mom someday?" At first, I didn't know how to answer. His biological mother had left our lives years ago. She had moved on, built a new life for herself, and barely kept in touch with Liam. I'd done my best to fill that void, but I knew he wanted more. "I don't know, buddy," I said gently, "but I think Tessa really cares for us. Let's just see what happens." He nodded, smiling as if that was enough for now. Over time, Tessa and I grew closer, and I started to see a future with her. Life wasn't perfect. There were still challenges to deal with, but I finally felt like things were moving forward in a healthy way. Liam had stability. Emma had her freedom. And I had peace of mind. As for my parents, well, they stayed gone. They'd made their choice, as had I. I didn't need their approval or their inheritance. I had my family now, the one I had built for myself, and that was more than enough. And that's how Justin's story ends. No more drama, just a clean break and a fresh start, and a fresh start, and a fresh start.